Smile, known across Rockford, now leaves a hole in the community. Tonight, friends remember Steve Freeman for a life that pushed people to see ability first. Freeman died this past week after decades of service, work, and friendship across the community. He worked 20 years at the Rockford Public Library, volunteered with the Rockford Police Department, and spent years at Gigi's Playhouse. Our Miriam Niesmeyer shares his legacy.
I talked with friends and co-workers who say Steve Freeman didn't just show up in Rockford. He made people feel seen, included, and loved.
When Steve walked into a room, you couldn't help but smile because he brought this energy with him.
That's how community members remember Steve Freeman.
Steve was really one of those people that showed you what someone with Down syndrome could do.
Freeman died Sunday, July 5th at 55 years old. Friends say he lived life with joy.
And that we just feel this huge hole with him no longer here.
Freeman spent a lot of time at Gigi's Playhouse in Rockford.
He just had a way of being a natural mentor.
Executive Director Karen Carlson says Freeman led without trying, showing younger participants what confidence and belonging could look like.
He was so dapper, so well dressed, and he just presented this, hey, we can do anything we set our mind to persona, and that's who he was. He changed so many lives just by simply being who he was.
His impact was not limited to just one facet of the community, from Special Olympics to Eagle Scouts, the Knights of Columbus, and even the Rockford Police Department.
Steve was always that leader.
Former Assistant Deputy Chief Mike Delkey says Freeman volunteered with the Citizens Assisting Police Members program at the Rockford Police Department.
One of his greatest days was getting his cap shirt, which kind of signified him as an official member of the police department, and he carried that with pride.
Freeman also spent 20 years working at the Rockford Public Library.
There are plenty of families in Rockford, when they think of the library, they think of Steve Freeman being there with his friendly smile and helping them find their things.
If other people could learn how to be more accepting like he was, the world would be a better place.
Gigi's Playhouse will hold a grief support session Friday from 12:30 to 2 in the afternoon. Carlson says the session will give people a safe place to share memories and process the loss together.
Thank you, Miriam. What an asset to the community. He'll definitely be missed. And a funeral mass will take place at 11 a.m. Friday, July 17th at St. Bernadette Catholic Church. It's the power